Okay, it's Wednesday, Christmas Eve. And if it's Wednesday, Christmas Eve or not, it's the state of energy. Wednesday is Energy Wednesday. And that means that Sharon Moriwaki joins me today as co-host, ready and raring. She feels so good because she has established this fabulous panel for her legislative briefing on January 16th at the state capitol. And if you are listening to this, you know, all the ships at sea, you have to know about January 16th, Thursday at the state capitol at 1:30 p.m. A fantastic roster of speakers and ideas that will explain to you what is really going on. And that takes me to my second introduction, who's on the Skype phone from Maui, and it's Marco.
Maui, Big Island. Oh, I thought you
were in Maui.
No, are you Maui or are you Big Island?
Big Island, from Hilo, sorry. Marco Mangelsdorf, who joins us by Skype audio from Hilo. Hi, Marco.
Hi, Marco.
Well, greetings, Jay and Sharon, and as we say in my household here on this festive time of year, I wish you both a very mele kaliki Marco.
And you too.
Happy Hanukkah too. Okay.
That's right. And Merry Christmas then.
Whatever it is. Well, here on Christmas Eve, you know, we are not to be daunted because Hawaii Energy works all day, every day, including Christmas Eve, and for that matter, New Year's Eve too. You'll see next week it's all set. And Carolyn Carl is here from Hawaii Energy to talk about a program called MFDI. And if you ask me to extend that acronym, I'd be lost completely, but she can help us. So Carolyn, welcome here on Christmas Eve, and happy Christmas, and can you tell us about MFDI?
Sure. Well, it stands for Multifamily Direct Install, which I know sounds like a mouthful, but it actually is a pretty simple new program that we're rolling out in January of the new year, specifically for condos and apartment buildings. So Hawaii Energy is offering the provision and installation of energy efficient technologies for tenant units. So we're talking about low flow shower heads, faucet aerators, CFLs, and smart power strips that we will have installers come and go through the building and apply them in all of the tenant units. So it's a new program. We're really excited about it. We've been already in contact with a number of properties, but we're continuing to recruit for involvement.
So as they say on Passover evening, how does this program differ from all the other programs before?
Well, this is specifically targeted at multifamily properties, which is an area which the program has historically not had anything specifically for, because it kind of falls in between residential and commercial programs. And this is a direct installation, meaning there's no cost to the customer. We take care of all of the product and installation.
Oh, is that right?
Mm-hmm.
So are you saying, let me see if I got this right, it's free?
It's free. It's free.
She said it's free.
It's free.
Yeah.
Wow.
Merry Christmas.
Whoa.
So tell us what the difference between residential and commercial, or where this fits, this multi-dwelling units.
Well, as you may know, if you live in a multifamily property, a condo, or in an apartment building, many of them are master metered. So it is a one central utility account, and therefore is considered a commercial property, while everyone, it is used for residential purposes. So it kind of is in that in-between. It's not an industrial property, it's really residential, but it's considered, in terms of its utility usage, a commercial account. Where other multifamily properties are, individually metered, so they all have their own Schedule R account. So for the Hawaii Energy program, where we design rebate programs for each of those sectors, this kind of is a unique crossover where we have to be creative and really design new offerings. And as I mentioned, historically it's been a more difficult market to penetrate, and I think a lot of that has to do with when a tenant unit is owned by the landlord, but the tenant has to pay the utility bill. Sometimes there's a disconnect in getting them to install more efficient technologies because of the cost associated with it. So but if you pay the electric bill, you think about it a lot more readily. So we're trying some new things, and we're continuing to expand.
That's great. You guys are so creative.
I'm a condo dweller, so not all of my neighbors are energy efficient conscious.
Right.
So would the whole building have to accept this, or do you do it by individual units or a certain proportion of a condo building? How would that work?
That's a great question. It's going to be on a case by case basis, because since this is a, it is a direct install, meaning it's a completely paid for by the program. We would have to reach, a certain number of units to make it cost effective, but that by no means excludes properties where not everybody is interested. Because in some cases they may already have, CFLs or LEDs, and we wouldn't need to replace them. So we're working directly with property managers, resident managers, and then the individual tenants, and as I mentioned, each property is unique, so we would need to discuss all the details. We are giving preference to those buildings with electric hot water heating, just because of the additional energy savings that can occur when you change out the shower heads. So, and at least 10 units in the property, just to be large.
Oh, you
Sounds
have to
good.
have 10 units, and so
That's-
straight Ohana housing is not going to work.
No, and we do have some other programs that would probably be more suited to the Ohana housing, but this one is more for like condos
Larger
and apartments.
buildings.
Yeah, larger buildings.
Now, if it's an apartment rental, you realize that the guy who's going to be the primary beneficiary is the owner, not the tenant. And when the tenant leaves, he's going to leave most of this, if not all of it, behind, right?
So, yep, and in these cases, so for the lighting, it really depends on the beneficiary, depends who pays the electric bill too, because if the tenant pays the electric bill, they'll absolutely benefit by being able to the reduced monthly costs. But the intention is that these are lasting measures, so the next tenant that moved in would be able to benefit from them as well. So, it is a new program, and we're piloting this year, so I think we're focusing mainly on Oahu, but we'll continue to explore opportunities on the neighbor islands once we kind of get off the ground.
Sounds good.
Okay, let me ask Marco. Marco, Carolyn can't hear you, but you've been able to hear her. Do you have any questions you would like us to put to her?
No, I just think they're doing a great thing by being able to make that kind of offering. And to be clear, if I'm not mistaken, that is funded by everybody in Helco and Miko territory that pays a electric utility bill, and it comes a small portion of each and everybody's monthly bill goes into that fund, which is used to do good things like that.
He said no.
I like those.
No, he says a good use of the ratepayer monies.
Good. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you, Carolyn. It's always great to see you guys. You're so creative, and you're always finding new parts of the marketplace to extend your negawatt moment. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Merry
Have a good
Christmas.
one.
Merry
Happy
Christmas.
holidays.
Happy
Aloha.
holidays to you.
Aloha.
Aloha.
Carolyn Carl, Hawaii Energy. Okay, Marco, it's up to you now. Carry the ball. So this is what, the 6 horsemen of the PV apocalypse. That's it. What we really mean is that there are 6 factors that are going to affect PV going forward that will influence what happens to the PV industry. And we know that, what shall we say, the PV industry is in play, as it has been, and it has, huge dynamics that nobody anticipated, say, 3 years ago. And now we need to examine exactly what the factors are and how it will affect that. And my goodness gracious, there are so many of them, and this is not an exhaustive list. So let's begin. Let's see, we have half an hour to do this. Let's take 3 factors per quarter hour.
Quarter.
Okay, factor 1, consumer demand, up, down, or stay the same. How is the demand going to go, and how is it going to affect not only the PV, but the industry?
Well, that is, of course, I think one of the biggest factors, and prognostication is always a little bit on the risky side in terms of what consumers are going to do, especially considering the degree of volatility that the PV industry, the PV demand and supply market in Hawaii is the state that it's in right now, and the state it's likely to be in the months and years or so to come. I mean, I like to, at the end of the year, the beginning of the new year, kind of do a a year in review, and I was asking myself, what are going to be the major factors which are going to be influencing the once vibrant local photovoltaic sales, design, and installation business in the state? And I came up with a number of variables that seemed reasonable to me that are going to affect the ups and downs of continued adoption of what I call rooftop PV or rooftop distributed generation, which I think it's important to differentiate between rooftop PV, which is located at people's homes, on people's roofs, on people's businesses, versus utility scale PV, which are essentially centralized mini power plants that are connected directly to the utility grid distribution and maybe even transmission lines in some cases.
Well, maybe we should be asking how the possible emergence of greater utility scale PV and I guess wind too, because utility scale renewables is really what we're talking about. How that is going to affect consumer demand for PV on non-utility scale, rooftop PV. I mean, could it be? I mean, I think we should examine that. I wonder if you have any thoughts about it. Could it be that with the emergence of these large-scale projects, that some consumers who might otherwise be interested in spending $30,000, $40,000 won't?
I don't think they're directly linked, because utility scale PV is a different animal compared to rooftop distributed generation PV, where you have the utility company much more in control of the output and the ups and downs of utility scale PV. So that's a way of saying that I don't think the two are necessarily connected. That said, my reading of what we're seeing, both in terms of the past year or two as far as Hawaiian Electric's strategic choices, and what Jim Robo, CEO at NextEra Energy, has been quoted as saying, it appears that the utility companies, not a surprise at all, really, when you look at the options available to them, that they are moving more heavily in the direction of their preferred option being to bring on multi-megawatts worth of centralized PV generation, utility scale PV generation, which again is it's cheaper to them, and therefore we assume overall to the ratepayers eventually, and they're more able to control it, so it's more easily manageable. And that line, that trajectory is going up and will continue to go up, as we just have heard.
Yeah, I came up with four separate elements on that Hawaiian Electric and or NextEra would look at. One is it's cheaper than individual rooftop installations. Two is, as you said, controllable. Three is it's more equitable. Instead of having some people who have bucks, get PV and others don't, this way everybody shares, in the benefit and the cost. And finally, the utility company makes money that way. If somebody else is generating the photovoltaic, they're not making money on it. I mean, we got to talk about the net energy metering too, but and I guess there's one other thing, and that is interconnect problems, which we kind of didn't talk about. And that is, if I am the utility and I put, utility scale PV down, then theoretically I should have an easier time interconnecting, because I know exactly what I'm dealing with, and it's no guesswork. I don't have to figure out who's generating what on their rooftops. I don't have to, do a lot of counting and analysis. Although I would say this to answer the first question that came up, Marco, and that is, if the utility starts generating a lot of utility scale PV, then that's going to take a toll on the system. because it's not firm power. So if you ask me to connect those 4,500 homes that are out there, and then you also you have the utility putting non-firm power on utility scale PV, what am I going to do? That would create a kind of a problem. Not everybody can do it, and we don't have the storage technology yet. But I saw that complicates it a little bit. In any event, you go ahead.
We may not have the energy storage capability and technology tomorrow or next week, but by the time these multi-megawatt utility scale power plants will be going into operation next year, and by necessity no later than 2016 because of the federal tax credit ending, as the legislation is written now, ending as of January 1, 2017.
Excuse me.
There's a rather short time window to get all these multi-megawatts actually in service, and although I can't speak to each and every one of these half a dozen projects which Hawaiian Electric has said in principle they want to move forward with pending, I think, PUC approval, I think it's a given that one or more of them, or perhaps all of them, will have some type of storage involved to smooth out the vagaries, the ups and downs of sun playing peekaboo behind clouds, and like you said, the non-firm power nature of PV. But to circle back to the initial question, Jay, regarding consumer demand and has it peaked? That's one that I'm really giving some serious thought to. I mean, we can certainly make the case that in 2012 and early 2013, according to the data, it did peak. That's undeniable compared to where we are now, a year and a half later. So the question to me is that line going to go up? Is the number of sales going to go up? Are the number of sales going to go up? Are the installations going to go up from the kind of doldrums that, comparatively speaking, we have seen over the past 12 plus months? And what would lead to a more rapid, a more robust consumer adoption for rooftop PV at this point? And given the fact that the pricing for photovoltaic systems has never been lower, given the fact that you have these third-party companies from Sunrun to Solar City to Vivint to Sunnova to SunPower, that there is no shortage of money available from outside sources to allow people to get PV at no cost to them, given the fact that GEMS will be operational sometime in the near future. There's no shortage of funds to do it. So it's about as easy as it can be now to do it. So what is going to be the motivation? What's going to be the push behind a more rapid adoption of PV when we're already here in the state? We have the highest per capita, highest percentage of homes in the country by far that have PV on their roofs. And I'm just hard-pressed to find what those trigger points will be to start the line on the graph to go back in the up direction.
So what I get from you is that, I'm not sure what I get from you.
I guess what I wanted to ask Marco, the biggest the mover, driver of all of this for the consumer is price. Whether it's utility scale or I get my PV on my roof, it's what is the cost to me over the long run, and can I keep that price stabilized so that I'm not paying $300 a month for my electricity bill. So if you look at PV utility scale or PV rooftop, how does that mix come about, and how should it go in the future for stabilization or enhancement of the solar industry? Because we're looking at how do we sustain an industry here for the long term to make ourselves much more energy efficient, energy self-sufficient.
You know what? We're going to take a break.
Oh no, I want to hear Marco.
It's a beautiful question, Sharon. No, it's beautiful. And I'm sure Marco has it. When we come back, we're going to get an answer to that. We're going to move on to the next 5 factors.
No,
The
we
next
still want
5 horsemen of the
consumer.
PV apocalypse.
Marco, think about that.
Short break. That's Marco Mangelsdorf, who joins us by Skype audio from Hilo here on Hawaii, the state of clean energy. which is a production essentially of the Hawaii Energy Policy Forum. That's one of the reasons that Sharon Moriwaki is here as my co-host. She is not kidding. And, and we'll be right back.
Aloha, I'm Keli'i Akina, president of the Grassroot Institute and host on Ehana Kako, a weekly program on the ThinkTech Hawaii broadcast network. Ehana Kako means let's work together. Think of the sad alternative, let's not work together. Here in Hawaii, with all of our diversity and the richness of the people, it's important for us to come together around issues on the basis of what's right and what's good and what's going to serve the common good. And that's what we try to do at Ehana Kako. Every week we interview movers and shakers, people in government, business, and other sectors of society to talk about how to create together a better government, economy, a better world here in Hawaii that can bless the rest of the world. I thank you for your attention to ThinkTech Hawaii, and we look forward to seeing you every Monday, 2 to 3 p.m. on the ThinkTech Hawaii Broadcast Network. We're Ehana Kako, and we wish you well. Aloha.
Okay, we're back. We're live. I'm Jay Fidell here on ThinkTech, and this is Hawaii, the state of clean energy. And our show today involves Marco Mangelsdorf, who joins us by Skype audio from Hilo. And by the way, I want to be clear about this. That's the same Marco Mangelsdorf that's going to be appearing in the integration panel of our legislative briefing on January 16th at the state capitol at 1:30, right, Sharon?
Correct, 1:30.
Yeah, Sharon's my co-host. Okay, Marco, so Sharon laid this big question on you. I think it's fair for you to restate it as you heard it and then answer it.
Well, a very good question, Sharon, and kind of multi-pronged there. Let me take a crack at it this way. We, I think, collectively are all interested in paying less for electrical power. I don't think that's disputable, and especially when Hawaii has been paying the highest electric rates in the country. So how do we get there from here? Well, as people have been pontificating for as long as I've been either a participant or an observer in this industry in Hawaii, which goes back to my first energy conference at the Sheraton in Honolulu back in 1980, 34 years ago, almost to the day.
Wow.
There's been talk about, okay, how can we get Hawaii to be more energy independent rather than be so darn energy dependent on such a long supply line of fossil fuels coming from multiple places on the face of the earth. And clearly, if we can have more indigenous power generated at a lower rate, I mean, that gets us to where we got to go, or where we want to go in terms of lower electric rates. So one has to support, really, Hawaiian Electric's efforts to bring 100 or more megawatts of PV power online in a fixed price power contract with a developer who's willing to sell that to Hawaiian Electric or Maui Electric or Hawaii Electric Light Company at 10 cents, 12 cents, 14 cents a kilowatt hour for a 20-year power purchase agreement. I mean, the farther we can go in that direction, the more that buffers us from the vagaries of oil pricing, which right now are shockingly low compared to where they were just 6 months or 12 months ago, putting around at mid-50 to $60 a barrel. So utility scale solar at 10, 12, 14 cents a kilowatt hour for long-term power purchase agreements, that financially, economically makes a lot of sense and will, over time, bring the price of electrical power to us in the state down. Now, in terms of rooftop PV and systems that people can actually put on their own homes to be more independent, we have the industry, the PV industry, which I've been a proud member of since here in the state for going on 15 years now. We have done very well, my company and other companies as well, in being able to offer net energy metered PV systems to, I think we're probably pushing 50,000 homeowners and business owners in the state, which is pretty darn good. But that has come at a cost as far as
it went off track somewhere, Marco. And I think, Hawaiian Electric has said that it wants to change it. I've been talking about changing it for a long time. I got witnesses about that. You know, because I think it pays the homeowner too much money. There's no spread in there for the guy who owns the transmission lines and so forth, or the grid in general. So fair is fair, but you can't pay retail, you know, and stay in business. So the question is, how should it change? Will it change? I mean, I talk about it, but I don't know, how do you change something like that? Is it a statutory change? Is it just a PUC? What it should change to, and assuming it's going to change in some equitable way, that is to pay the homeowner less so that he's not getting paid at retail. How much of an effect is that going to have? Because a lot of those spreadsheets that guys in the PV industry have been handing out to all these homeowners assume full payment under net energy metering. If that goes away, those spreadsheets aren't going to look nearly as good.
Just a point of clarification, G. You're making kind of a common mistake in terms of using the verb pay, and that's technically not correct, because the utility company is not paying people under net energy metering. They are crediting people under net energy metering. That's maybe a minor but an important difference nonetheless. And so we're kind of morphing to my second factor there in terms of the life and travails of the local PV industry, which is net energy metering.
We're definitely on the second factor.
The second factor, right? That's been in existence since July of 2001. So we're going on 13 plus years, and it has been an enormous success story for tens of thousands of homeowners and for dozens and dozens of businesses like mine. But like you said, you know, what business can stay in business when you are crediting somebody, a customer, at the same amount that you are charging them? That makes no sense financially. So I think net energy metering has had a heck of a run, and I see it as inevitable within the next year or two that it's going to come to an end. And just, you know, interestingly, point of fact, Kauai Island Utility Co-op, which has been lauded, rightly so, and given so many accolades over the past year or two for the fantastic job that they have done to bring in renewables and solar onto their little island, they did away with their net energy metering program several years ago with nary a peep, because they had reached the mandated, by the PUC, the mandated percentage of NEM that they had to allow, and once they reached that cap, they said, we're done, enough already. That doesn't mean a homeowner can't go PV on Kauai. It means that they can do it through what's known as a Q contract, which means that they don't get retail credit for surplus power fed back into the KIUC grid. They actually get paid, if I'm not mistaken, at the avoided cost rate, which is essentially kind of the wholesale rate.
Interesting that they're kind of ahead of us on this issue. But speaking of getting ahead of us, we have to take another break.
So soon.
Yeah, well, no, we have two in every show, Sharon.
It seemed to come so soon.
Sharon Moriwaki, she has to come down here more often. And Marco Mangelsdorf, who joins us by Skype from Hilo. We're talking about the 6 horsemen of the apocalypse, of the PV apocalypse.
Only number 2.
And we just finished number 2. We have 4 to go. We're going to have to rush when we get back. We'll be back in a minute.
Aloha, I'm Hunter Hevelin, host of Sustainable Hawaii here at ThinkTech Hawaii. You can tune in every week on Thursday at 2 p.m. to see interviews with sustainability professionals from around the state and even further abroad, learning about activities with water management, food security, waste management, and a whole host of other fascinating opportunities to get engaged with making a greener island. So if you're interested in making the transition from consuming individuals to communities of producers, check us out every Thursday. Aloha.
Okay, we're back, we're live, we're here. We got 4 horsemen of the apocalypse left, 4 of the 6 horsemen, and these are factors that will affect the PV industry one way or the other. So the next factor, Marco Mangelsdorf, is grid penetration challenges. I guess that's interconnect. And will things get, first you have to answer the question, will things get better or worse? And I suppose that brings in, Alan Oshima's, attempt to improve it. He said he would
Grid
do that.
modernization, yes.
Yeah, and then of course you get the additional impetus from the deal with Nextera, because they want to improve it too. Nobody wants those 4,500 angry homeowners to stand out there any longer. So how is it going to get resolved? When is it going to get resolved? And how is it going to affect the industry?
Well, I harken back to a Hawaiian Electric contact of mine telling me a number of months ago, looking at the 400 plus circuits on Oahu that Hawaiian Electric has there on the island, and according to them, about half of those 400 circuits, about half of them were at a, quote, point of concern for Hawaiian Electric. Now you can say, oh, well, that's not true. They can't be concerned about that. They shouldn't be concerned about that because the Germans are doing this, the Dutch are doing that. But I'll take their concern, their expression of concern, at face value. And I don't see, as we talked about, I think a number of times before, Jay, I don't see some type of magical breakthrough techno fix is going to be coming down from the heavens, or let alone from Juno Beach, Florida, from Nextera headquarters, that's going to miraculously allow for substantially more rooftop PV, again, to differentiate between that and utility scale PV. I don't see some type of techno fix coming down anytime in the near future. And as the levels of penetration continue to creep up, both on a circuit-by-circuit basis and on a system basis, the challenges become more challenging, at the risk of sounding redundant. So I think it's going to be, I think the challenges will continue to be challenging, and I think it's going to be tougher.
Well, what about the notion of just not sending power back? In other words, you can use your PV, just use it as much as you want, use it all day, and you can send it back while we need it, but if we don't need it, we're going to turn you off. And you're not going to get paid anything, not the retail, not the wholesale, nothing. And in that way, there is no interconnect issue at all. We are never concerned about overloaded circuits because we don't let that happen. And this,
right.
To me, logically, it seems like such an elegant way to solve the problem, but nobody talks about that. The other possibility, of course, is storage. If I said, look, you want to put PV in, put one of Joe Saturnia's storage devices in, and you can store it all you want. I mean, it's really the same thing, because you don't need to rely on the grid in general as your storage system. You store your own storage system. I mean, there are ways to do this. Just I agree with you in the sense that I haven't seen any specific solution articulated and coming down the pike right now. It's more like, we'll fix it, give us a chance to fix it, but I don't see exactly how. How do you feel about that?
Well, Jay, in fact, there was a letter, 26-page, if I'm not mistaken, letter that was written from Hawaiian Electric to the PUC that addressed exactly what you're talking about, which is usually known as a non-export design, And I gave a crack at reading it. I also had my business partner, who's a very bright guy, sometimes even brighter than I am, take a look at it. And it's mind-numbing in terms of trying to figure out what exactly they're saying and what the options are. So it is, at a minimum, it is very much a work in progress, and a contractor or contractors proceed with this at their own peril, because the last thing you want to do as a salesperson or a contractor is oversell something or misrepresent, consciously or otherwise, what the benefits and savings are going to be to the homeowner.
Absolutely.
And I see things as being continued to be very muddled in this design, the so-called non-export design.
Well, hold on, don't come to that conclusion, because I'm going to ask Sharon to get on now, and she will explain the 26-page letter to you right now. Ready?
No,
Go,
I
Sharon.
just wanted to bring in this whole smart grid technology that they're working on. Is that part of it, where you can actually control and back and forth of on the coming and going from the generation to the grid and back? I mean, is that one technology that is there for use?
They've developed that for the smart grid.
So
I'm
how
sure they
can't
have
that be used? I mean, why is it so difficult? Marco,
Well,
what have you read?
Sharon, to me, the smart grid is kind of akin to saying, well, what can you tell me about the smart grid? It's kind of a similar question is, what can you tell me about your conception of the Lord Almighty? And they'll look deeply into your eyes and start go into some type of rhapsody, because it's a deep subject. It can be rather ambiguous, and to me, the smart grid can mean many things to many people, but I think it's almost kind of become like holy mana status, where, oh, if we just had the smart grid tomorrow or next week or next year, gee, that's going to take care of everything for us, when it really hasn't done much yet to date. I mean, it's a work in progress, but in terms of, again, it's not in my opinion, it's not a techno fix which is going to be immediately available to us to be able
Okay,
to,
well, we have the grid penetration challenges question then, and I don't think we have a real answer on that, because we don't know exactly, how you resolve the penetration challenges, and therefore you cannot, determine how much the fix will affect the industry. Let's go to the next one. Energy storage, which is kind of linked in with all of this, but do you have comments on that? I mean, the question being, as a factor, of PV, as a factor of the, the delivery of PV, the installation of PV, changes in energy storage, do we have them, and how soon can they make a difference on, the health of the PV installation industry?
I think it's more likely to happen on a utility scale faster than on a house-by-house, customer-sited scale. It'll be more easily scalable. It'll be cheaper on a per kilowatt hour or per megawatt hour basis. It'll be more manageable and controllable. And I think those kind of projects could very well attract funding from the Department of Energy and from private corporations to lower the cost, because there's a lot of interest in doing that. So I think it's going to happen sooner on the utility scale. In terms of doing it on the customer side of the meter, I think that's going to take longer. And it's going to be, if I were wearing my prognostication hat, I think it's going to be at least several years out there before we see the type of significant reductions in cost to something other than 100-year-old lead-acid battery technology, whether it's lithium-ion or what are some of the other various more exotic technologies there. But the cost of the storage, of the customer side of storage, has to come down, in my opinion, by a factor of 60 to 80 to 90% until before it gets to be truly cost effective, and that's not going to happen next week. It's not going to happen next month.
So what I hear you saying is that since it's not going to happen next week, it's going to have no significant effect on the health of the industry next week. But before we move on to number 5, let me ask you one question. I heard an ad by one of these solar installation companies a few days ago on television, and you had a picture of solar panels on the roof, but the ad came on and said, "Do you have a leak in your kitchen?" I said, "What?" What has that got to do with it? It says, "This company can fix your leak in your kitchen because we're also plumbers." So, and we're a full service company. We do leaks in kitchens. We also do solar. I mean, and that, to me, that's a sort of a desperate ad, that they want to do anything and everything they can do to get into your house and fix something. Okay,
Yeah.
good. But, why don't solar companies do that Joe Saturnia thing and try to find, residential scale storage for people? I mean, he found his price point is, I think, $10,000 or $15,000. Maybe you could find it cheaper now. I think there's a lot of people in the marketplace, especially the 4,500. The battle of they rode into the valley of the PV horsemen The 4,500. The 4,500 would probably pay, I don't know, 7,500 bucks if you gave them a reasonable solar facility. Why doesn't that guy who wants to repair my kitchen sink, why doesn't he go the other direction and try to sell me, it's a solar installer, sell me, some storage? Why didn't he do that?
But Jay, are you talking about a scenario where you are completely disconnecting from the grid and going 100% off grid, or are you talking about batteries in a non-export design, still connected to the grid?
Whatever works. I don't care.
Okay.
Either way, it's fine.
I believe that any talk of any type of significant, let alone mass exodus from the utility grid in terms of people saying, the heck with Hawaiian Electric, I'm just going to go off grid if they say I can't go PV. Well, that sentiment certainly may be very vibrant, so to speak, but the practicality and the cost of following through with that are a different matter entirely right now and next year and likely the year after. So completely disconnecting from the grid, you'll have a very, very small number of people who will be those, I have the 20.
Okay, I buy it. So I'm not going to disconnect. I like it much better to stay connected for many reasons, including, the common good. I want to be part of, my peer group. I want to be part of the state. So I stay connected to my utility as I have been for 100 years. Okay, why not do that? But still, why not the $7,500 deal? Can't somebody find that? Can't this?
Well, we'll circle back to what I said a little while ago, which is that is a PV system designed with storage in a non-export mode, and that is the kind of mind-numbing, confusing mess that as I see it, that is still being discussed by the various parties in terms of how the systems would actually work. And I'm convinced, unless someone can prove it otherwise to me, I'm convinced that that design at its best is suboptimal. And I think there's a real significant risk of a salesperson or a contractor overselling the benefits and really upsetting the homeowner that spends the tens of thousands of dollars to do it, and his or her expectations for savings off their utility bill will not be met.
Okay.
That is it.
Okay, we're gonna move on because we only have we're almost out of time. Okay, tax credits. So the investment tax credit is going away by 2017 for residential, and it's down to 10% for commercial. And you could feel, the pinch on your neck already. This is not a good thing for the solar industry because A, the prospect of these things going down doesn't seem to affect the market, and B, when they really go down, I imagine it's gonna have a very detrimental effect on the industry. What's your thought, Marco?
Well, there's likely to be, number one, it's always possible that the Republican Congress and the Democratic President, which is of course Obama, in 2016, the Republican Congress could pass a bill which would somehow extend the federal investment tax credit for residential and keep it at 30% for commercial. So that is a possibility, but my reading of the Republicans in Congress these days find that to be rather unlikely given the strong anti-solar sentiment by some of the members on that side of the island that I've heard these past years.
Yeah,
so I think that there's likely to be a bump across the country in 2016 with the concern that the federal tax credits will go away. So I think it'll have a kick in the pants, metaphorically speaking, to the industry in 2016. And we'll still have the state tax credit, and I'm sure that there's going to be no shortage of people in my industry, both from inside the state and outside the state, who will be vigorously opposing any type of reconsideration of the state tax credit, solar tax credit, which currently has no sunset date. So I'd be very surprised in this next session there was any serious consideration of tinkering with the solar tax credit, the state solar tax credit, because I think that would be fought ferociously by numerous parties.
What about increasing it? Because the federal is going down and out.
Oh, I hadn't even considered that, I would find that to be a rather tough sell. But where Governor David Ige is on that. But yeah, I hadn't even thought about increasing the tax credit. We'll be able to ask Chris Lee and Mike Gabbard next month, won't we?
Yeah. Just the other side of it, Marco, at what point do incentives go away because we have saturated the market? And at what point then do we say, oh, this industry is strong enough, we don't need an incentive? Is there ever a point like that? Or how would you determine it?
I mean, that's a super juicy question, Sharon, and it's one I've written on and spoken on a number of times in the past several years, and it really brings up the question of subsidies. And once an industry has a subsidy in the form of a tax break or rebate program, I mean, the law of the jungle is really that they will fight tooth and nail to keep it forever. No industry that I know of is going to be happy and joyous to see a subsidy that has been an incredible boon for them simply disappear. And we have had a state tax credit for solar in one form or another since 1976, 38 years. At what point do we say, look, we've achieved the desired results, we've achieved an economy of scale, lower cost, mass adoption, and we can ramp these credits down? I happen to believe that it's high time to have that discussion, especially when you consider the fact that in 2012, the last year we have full data from the State Department of Taxation, the state tax credits for solar back in 2012 were $170 million plus dollars.
That's a lot of bread. And when you compare that with the Act 221 that everybody was so excited about, Act 221 was peanuts compared to $170 million. Peanuts.
Yeah.
So anyway, let's move on to the last one because we're really, out of time. We're in the 13th inning already. So LNG. Short answer: what effect will LNG have as one of the last of the 6 horsemen of the PV apocalypse in Hawaii?
Well, assuming, and this is of course a big assumption, assuming that liquefied natural gas will continue to be at its low cost, which I think is, again, I don't live and breathe natural gas pricing, but I don't see fracking on the U.S. mainland disappearing or going off the cliff in the immediate future. I think it's going to putt along for at least a number of years. If we can assume that LNG, nat gas pricing will continue to be low, number one, and number two, that there will be the political regulatory decision made to bring in more LNG into the state of Hawaii, which of course is a big debate in and of itself. So if those two assumptions are true, low pricing, more LNG into the state of Hawaii, then that makes solar less attractive financially by comparison.
Okay, there you have it. There you have it. It's as plain as day. I mean, I think a lot of these things will come true. Just the way, Marco, you're going to add a lot of value to the integration.
That's right. We're going to expect to hear a lot for the 16.
Yeah, let the record reflect that Sharon.
Very kind of you. Let me close in saying, I already feel this weight of feeling that I come across far too much of the time as Dr. Doom and Gloom in terms of my industry that I've dedicated a lot of my time and energy into. And I would like nothing more, Jay and Sharon, nothing more than for someone to challenge my analysis and say, I have a case to be made. I have a case that's going to be made that things will get better in the next 6 to 36 months. I would love to hear it, but I can't make the case myself.
Well, that would be the excitement on January 16th. We're going to see if anybody agrees with you and all the noisy disagreement. We're going to see what happens to Marco on January 16th. Come on down to the legislative briefing at the Capitol.
Look forward to seeing you there, Marco.
Yeah, thank you, Marco. Always. Thank you very much.
Fantastic as always. Thank you, Sharon and Jay. Good day.
You take care. Happy Christmas tonight. Remember, it's tonight.
Thank you, Marco.
Okay. Aloha.
Aloha.